In the same way as that people play professional sport, I play business. I lost all my money that I made, plus I owed the bank millions and millions of pounds. I was seriously thinking of going back to work as an accountant because everything was crashing down around me. And that £180,000 saved my business, saved my company, and in a peculiar way saved me because it realised I can't be beat.
Eddie, obviously a massive part of Matchroom, your son. Am I right in thinking that one of your tests for Eddie was to get him in the boxing?
Yes. I walked in the door and I saw 700 Barry Hearns in there, chanting with their mates and watching world-class sport at the same time. And I turned around to Dick Alex, Tommy Cox, Marcus Robertson. I said, I just smell money.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Dart Show podcast. I'm delighted to say we're joined by Mr. Barry Hearn, the man behind Matchroom. Barry, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
It's a pleasure, yeah. And you were a bit slow in getting me on your podcast. I was very jealous. You know, when I was famous and young, I'd have been on episode 1. Now I'm sort of...
I think let's just start again. We'll just do this is episode 1. We'll start there. Episode 0 if you prefer.
Well, is it really episode 1?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, in that case, I take it all back, and I'm so honoured to be your opening guest.
Thank you very much. We'll just crack right onto it.
Yeah,
I want to get to the Barry Hearn, the real Barry Hearn, without the stress of reading your book. Haven't done it yet.
I know. Well, listen, so many other people are reading it. Sunday Times bestsellers. plug. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plenty of time for that. What is it that drives you, Barry?
It changes, doesn't it, through your life? I mean, when you start off, certain things drive you: wealth, gain, commercial success, winning at all costs, sacrifice, the pleasure of being right, you know, all those sort of things, and looking in the mirror and saying, nice one, son, you had a good day. And then as you get older, you mature a little bit, and as you get more successful, different things take different priorities. So as you get to my age now, you become more reflective. I think there's 3 stages in life for most people. One is where if you're an entrepreneurial type and you're quite aggressive in your outlook, you have to be very selfish when you start, and that you're driven there for wealth, monetary gain. And then when you achieve a certain amount of success, you become more of a better father and a better husband, perhaps, when you become more family orientated and appreciate what you got round you. And that's a different feeling. And then in the twilight years, you become more concerned about perhaps putting something back into the area you came from or the community you came from. And that's probably where I am now. But it's 3 different attitudes of mind. But it's all focused on one thing, and that's winning. In the same way as that people play professional sport, I play business. It's the same thing, same rules. Preparation is key. Natural ability is fundamental. God-given ability would be wonderful. But that desire and attitude that you get from winning sporting competitions, I take out on balance sheets and profit and loss accounts, and that's my kick.
So sport and business, you feel, are very, very similar endeavours?
I think any major sportsman that's sacrificed and really paid his dues could be a really good business person if they take the same rules of life and extend that to business. Because there's no shortcuts. You know, you have to and you want sustainability. So you don't want to be a flash-in-the-pan winner on the circuit. You want to be a consistent performer on the circuit. And that applies to business as well. I don't want to be a successful business for 12 months. I want to build a generational business that can be sustainable for generations.
You mentioned those things that drive you. Money to start off with, then family or lifestyle or whatever it is, and then maybe legacy. Would that be a fair?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Way of doing it. Which one of those is more powerful?
Well, it changes. You know, when I was young, I was very aggressive. I'll do anything to be successful, you know. I mean, pretty well anything. Tried to stay on the right side of the law. Otherwise, my mum would have been furious with me. And it just changes, you know. I think wife and children are important. We have a phrase here at Matrimony, it's family first, but business a close second. And that's pretty well what it's been. And sometimes the business may be just edge in front of the family in the early days. Later on, you know, you want them around you all the time because, you know, that's the legacy you want to create. So, yeah, I think priorities change and, you know, and targets change as you go through life. And the beauty is you've got to be able to adjust, you know.
Well, look, we're sat in Matchroom HQ. This is what all of your endeavours helped build. Do you take satisfaction sort of sitting here and looking at what this achieved? This was never even on the radar when it started.
No. Listen, my dad was a bus driver, my mum was a char lady. We had no money. My dad died early. We were on the benefits for years. People taking the of you, and you get, you know, I mean, we didn't have a car. We didn't have an inside toilet. We never saw a tree. We were living on estates, council estates, and that's okay. You know, when you're a kid, you don't even know. You know, I was very happy. Lots of love in the family. It's only later on when you get perhaps into your 11 years old, early teens, where you look around and you think, why haven't I got one of them? You know, why haven't I got a house with a toilet indoors? Why haven't I got a car parked outside? And then you start realising that life doesn't deal the same cards to everybody. And you go two or three ways. You get resentful, you can get envious, or you can say, I'm going to get some of this. And I was in chapter 3, you know, so it was just a question of how do I get some of the rich stuff. I want to be. It was about material things, you know, because we didn't have anything. So it didn't make you a bad person, but it made you very focused.
You say that there's that sport and business thing that dovetails, but you getting into sport only kind of happened by accident, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a sportsman myself, but never. I've been, as you'd imagine, I'm gold medal in enthusiasm, but not even bronze medal in ability. So I've tried everything, and I got reasonable at everything without being good at anything. And that was always a frustration. I mean, I grew up as a kid, 7 or 8 years old, wanting to be heavyweight champion of the world. I don't know why. I used to watch Marciano and Dempsey and people like that. I used to think it was fascinating. And I like one-to-one conflict. I've always enjoyed opponents rather than teams more, you know. I like to be responsible for my actions, and I like to have the benefit of success when on the rare occasion it happens. So I tried all these sports with no avail. And then business, it was quite clear quite early that I was quite good at business. You know, I was quite smart. And I had a work ethic that people couldn't understand or live with, because it was like, I was a bit like Forrest Gump. You know, they told me to run, so I ran. And, you know, and I'll keep running until you tell me to stop. And if you don't tell me, I'll keep running. So my mother told me to be a chartered accountant when I was 12. I didn't know what they did, but no one disagreed with my mother. We were sitting here in this palatial office in Maskell's in Brentwood. I bought this in 1982 as my house. And I showed my mother around. The first time she walked in, she had her mouth open. She's never, you know, it's a big old gaff, isn't it? And she looked at me and she said, "Are you doing anything illegal?" She couldn't understand that anyone that came from where we did could ever acquire a property of this size. And I said, "No, Mum, I'm a chartered accountant, you remember?" I said, "Chartered accountants make terrible gangsters." I don't think she ever believed me, but she took it on the chin. So when you look at it now and you think 1982 was the beginning of Matchroom. I'd sold a chain of snooker halls, I had money, I was 34. I was going to retire. I thought, that's it. You know, I've got enough money now. And what is enough? And you forget about the buzz you get from doing deals. And in the same way a sportsman for a race or a competition, the rush of adrenaline they get is phenomenal. I'm not sure I get the intensity, but I still get the same rush when I do deals. And I've done a lot of deals. Most of them have been successful, I have to say. I'm quite smart at what I do, but I never had that real rush of adrenaline that a sportsman gets when he lands the knockout punch, or he scores the winning goal, makes the winning putt, throws the winning dart. And I'm quite jealous of that, which is why sportsmen and women are my heroes. But that also put me in a very good place for rewarding talent, appreciating talent, and wanted to show them or showcase their talent to the world. That seemed to be what I was born for, and they were doing what they were born to do.
So you got into sports sort of by accident. It was the snooker clubs, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I started doing snooker events just to try and get more customers into snooker clubs. And this tall ginger kid turned up called Steve Davies. They say the rest is history, but, you know, eventually I recognised his talent. He knew that I could promote his career. We became friends, which was fundamental to it working. The snooker boom happened, which is fundamental to the luck that I've enjoyed in life. I'm good, but you look a lot better than you are if you've got luck on your side as well. And BBC suddenly went ballistic on snooker. I was in the right place at the right time. My dog could have probably done what I did, but I took all the credit and most of the money, and we had a ball. Spread the game all around the world. The good thing is Steve is, I mean, he's a DJ now more than a snooker player, coming up to Glastonbury for the 5th time, I think. But he's still my best friend. So we've survived a long time, and we've laughed an awful lot, which is fundamental to the way Matchroom do things. Is, you know, we like to be successful, and we encourage that attitude, but we like to do it with a smile on our face because we don't want to take ourselves too seriously.
Look, hard work, talent, luck, they're all things that combine to create success. But it hasn't all been plain sailing for you. There have been. How do you deal as a person with setbacks?
I compartmentalise my brain, which means that once I have a setback, in any, whether it's a personal life or business, I dispatch any negativity to an area of my brain that I can't access. So it doesn't exist. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily make me a nice person. So people leaving this world, which is sad, I put it to one side. It doesn't. Very little gets to me.
It seems like you're an absolute machine.
I am.
I'm not sure there's good things about that, but there's got to be downsides.
I make James Wade look exciting. Right? I am a machine. I'm a machine that cries at lassie movies, you know? So I can be sentimental, but when it actually gets down to it, I have the skin of a rhinoceros. I don't accept failure because should I fail, I ignore it and move on to another area where I will be successful. So,
how close did it get to potentially failure?
Well, in the late 80s, during the recession, I mean, I'd made a lot of money, I thought it was a lot of money in 1982, about £1.5 million. It was a lot of money in 82. Of course, it wasn't enough to retire, and I had 6 weeks of playing snooker and golf and fishing and cricket, but I wasn't getting that adrenaline rush of doing deals and making things happen. So that's when we formed Matchroom, which was only formed as a £100 company purely to have fun. You know, I didn't think I needed the money. So let's have some fun and take Steve, go around the world, you know, have to enjoy ourselves. You know, I thought I'd done my work. I was 34, it's quite old. And from there, it all seemed, I sort of invested quite a lot of money into lots and lots of different events. In my trips to America previously, I'd noticed this company called ESPN showing sport to the masses, and I thought, we don't have anything like this in the UK. One day we will. And when someone like that comes over, they will need programming because there isn't any. So I thought, well, I'll start getting some ready. Snooker, pool, whatever you want to call it, boxing. And of course, I was years ahead of my time. So I lost all my money that I'd made. Plus, I owed the bank millions and millions of pounds. And it came to a crescendo probably in, I think it's 88, 89, where I was seriously thinking of going back to work as an accountant because everything was crashing down around me. I got off a train at Slough. It was snowing. It was 4:00 in the afternoon, Christmas Eve. And I walked in to see this very nice chap called Alan Hearn. No relation, but same name. And I made the worst pitch ever to get him to sponsor the European Snooker League, which was happening 3 weeks later. And I needed 300 grand. And after I finished, terrible, my heart wasn't in it. It was a bit like a fight where you're coming out in the championship rounds and you don't really want to be there. You've been battered. You ain't going to win. You'd rather go home, sit in the bath. And I was like that. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm smart. I can still get a job. I'm going to feed my family. No big deal. And when I finished, he said, you must really need this. It's Christmas Eve. It's just gone 4:00. I went, to be honest with you, I do need it badly. He said, well, I've got no money. So I thought, well, that's it. The last kick in the nuts is all I want. Happy Christmas, Bazza. Let's go out. And I'm thinking to myself, let's go out with some style. So I just looked at him and said, Mr. Hearn, thank you for the time. I hope you and your family have a wonderful Christmas. And I turned to leave and he said, but I have got hotel rooms. And I said, what does that mean? He said, well, I've got no money for sponsorship. I said, you've told me that already. He said, but I've got some of the best hotels in the world and I've got rooms. Would that interest you? Well, at the time, they had Sandy Lane in Barbados, they had the Georges V in Paris, they had the Plaza Athénée in New York, they had the Waldorf Astoria in London. Of course it interested me. He said, I'll give you 300 grand's worth of hotel rooms. And we shook hands. By the time I'd walked to Slough Station, I'd sold that £300,000 on my good name and reputation for delivering to a group of pals in the travel business at a 40% discount, and they sent me £180,000 in cash. And that £180,000 saved my business, saved my company, and in a peculiar way saved me, because it realised I can't be beaten. I just can't be beaten. And I suppose the thoughts that would go through, say, Phil Taylor's head at his peak, where he could almost throw with his eyes closed and say to himself, I'm the best in the world. I can't be beaten. It was the feeling I had that day. And that hasn't left me ever since.
Well, you mentioned Phil Taylor. The darts became one of your increasing portfolio of sports that you're involved in. When was the moment when darts became a thing for you?
It was weird because obviously, I love sport anyway. And I can't tell you I was a big darts fan before I got involved. But people know me, and I'm particularly good at certain parts of the business, in particular TV sales and globalisation. And the PDC, struggling with their battle with the BDO, came to see me and said, look, they recognised they weren't very good. They were very good at certain things, darts related, but they weren't good at the commercial. And they said, would you help us with our TV? And, basically what I do. So I get paid a chunky commission and I go and terrorise people and sell hours of coverage. So I did that for a couple of years. It was going okay, slightly slower than I would have hoped. And then the PDC made another very bold statement and said, look, we're still losing a little bit of money. The only people that gained from the PDC and the BDO was the lawyers, really. Would you be our chairman? And I saw that they needed cash badly to keep going. And I said, I don't do chairmanship, I do ownership. So I said, why don't you, we'll put a value on the company, issue some shares, I'll underwrite the whole issue, offer it to existing shareholders, those people that don't take up their shares, I will, and then I'll be chairman. And that's what we did. And I acquired, I think it was 36% of the ownership of the PDC, which has grown over the years to 70% because I like darts. And they took me to the Circus Tavern when this process was going through, and I walked in the door and I saw 700 Barry Hearns in there, drinking pints of lager, having a fag, having a bet with the bookies, having a dodgy pizza, chanting with their mates, and watching world-class sport at the same time. And I turned around to Dick Alex, Tommy Cox, Marcus Robertson. I said, I just smell money. And that was where it all started.
When you walked in there and you could smell money, like you said, what kind of vision did you have?
Just the fact that I love uniqueness, and darts for me epitomised that uniqueness in terms of it was very ordinary people, but they were performing with extraordinary ability. They weren't the chosen athletic types that we'd all been stereotyped into thinking sportsmen and women must look like, but clearly they'd mastered or had gone a long way towards mastering the art of chucking a dart at a bit of sisal. It suddenly occurred to me that, well, I say they was all me because they were doing something that was quite unique. I didn't know another sport that was a party built around real sport. The closest I got to it was WWE, which was a party, but then that was rehearsed, so it sort of got disqualified in a way, in a sporting sense. And I saw that this is exactly what people should be doing to entertain the vast majority. People look down their nose, and I always had a chip on my shoulder when I was younger where I came from. They look on down their nose at working class people, whether it's the establishment, whether it's the media. Somehow we don't seem to quite matter as much. So when you go to a TV company, they will say, golf, oh yes, we play golf. Rugby, oh yes, we play rugby. And they pay a lot of money for those TV rights, but they don't get a huge audience. So why do they? And it's about perception. And when you get a rather overweight darts player walking up to the hockey, the perception is not good in terms of what people perceive their money should be spent on. But, and this is true especially in America, there are an awful lot of blue-collar people. I am a blue-collar, we call them working class. I'm working class. The fact that I've made a shed load of money doesn't change my ideology that I am working class. But we don't get the respect that other existing sports do, despite the fact that we over-deliver in excellence and enjoyment. So the job was, let's get hold of this sport, take it to a wider audience, build up the endorsement value of sportsmen and women. So give them the personalities, give them the nicknames, the entry music, the star treatment, make them feel special, let them play every week, give them activity, give them prize money that can change their life. And you will create a monster, as it's turned out to be a very large monster. Second highest rated sport on Sky now, basically second in Germany, Holland, and growing, as you will know from your European tour, rapidly all over the place. And it's because it's attractive to ordinary people. And there's an awful lot of them.
Or do you think that relatability, that ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and how people can sit and watch it on the telly or in a venue and go, that could be me doing that.
That geezer looks like the bloke who lives round the corner.
Yeah.
That's just, but that breaks down so many social barriers. And it doesn't matter if you're black or white, Muslim or Christian, man or woman. There is no diversity factor, only a meritocracy on the hockey.
Do you think does that translate across the world? We've seen it in Germany. It's grown massively.
No question. Because there's no barriers to entry. Again, another one of my chips on my shoulder from my early days. There's places I couldn't go to. I wasn't a member. I didn't have the right equipment. A very well-known firm of accountants made me their youngest ever audit manager in over 200 years because I was good. and told me on the same day, when I was 24 years old, that this is as far as you go because you didn't go to university, your parents haven't got money, you haven't got the old school tie that works, but don't worry, you're going to be well paid and you're going to have a great pension. I left within 3 months.
Barry, in your long and varied career, but particularly with a view to darts, who are the most significant people that you've worked with that have helped put this sport where it is now?
Well, you'd have to say Phil Taylor, obviously, because a legendary player that raised the bar to a level it hadn't been seen before and added that dimension of excellence that made people start to appreciate how difficult this game is to play at that level. I think behind the scenes people are probably more relevant sometimes than players, the people that made that sacrifice early on, people like Tommy Cox, who's no longer with us, Dick Alex, Marcus Robertson, Edward Lowy, Rod Harrington. These are guys that made an investment in time and sometimes money as well. And they've all, on the money side, they've all done very well out of it because darts has been a big success. But they didn't go into it knowing it was going to be a big success. They went into it for the right reasons. I'm eternally grateful for the fact that they brought me in a way acknowledging that they needed me because most sports are not big enough to make that obvious judgment. The exploitation of sport, the commercialisation of sport today is a very technical business, and you have to know what you're doing. You can't it, it's deliverable numbers, and it involves a lot of work. You're establishing relationships with broadcasters all over the world and sponsors all over the world. You're trying to sell tickets all over the world. It's a factory. But you can't ride a merry-go-round with one foot on the floor, and you need people that get on. And I am like a dog with a bone on any business. I don't get off the merry-go-round. I'm finding it very difficult to semi-retire at the moment, which I'm getting some stick for, but I'm going to have to get better at it in time. But it's very difficult because it's a bit like saying your kid's grown up. You're not interested in your kid anymore. Well, you are, but it's a different type of relationship.
We'll certainly get to that, Barry. But you mentioned Phil, and the story of Phil Taylor, the story of PDC darts are intertwined inextricably. Would it be where it is now? Is it more important to have a dominant force when you're trying to grow a game, trying to sell a sport? Is it better to have one person or one team that dominates than having, say, perhaps a more varied lineup?
It comes at different stages. Like we talked about earlier about your own personal development. Sports personal development also comes in different stages. There are times, that phrase they used when Fallon won her first, when you have to break the glass window or the glass door, the glass roof.
Ceiling.
Glass ceiling.
We got there. Some part of the house.
Glass ceiling. Yes. So a dominant personality going through is something, especially in a fairly technical sport like darts, where you can actually, you don't bullshit winning. Numbers tell you, So when someone starts averaging, for example, consistently over 100, when someone starts having 9 dart finishes, technically that's unequivocal. You can't work around it. So you do need that dominant factor to break that ceiling early doors. But then, of course, every great sportsman has to play someone to be great. And there's a sort of an optimum size, really, of 4 or 5, which would be your optimum. That would mean that when they get beat, it's a big enough headline to get media, but they don't get beat that often, and they feature in the latter stages, which gives the event credibility. So whether you're talking about tennis with Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, Murray, that's Asia 4. You're talking snooker, you're talking about Ronnie O'Sullivan, Mark Selby, Mark Williams, Judd Trump, John Higgins, there's 4 or 5 there. And I think probably darts has got 5 at least at the moment, but with so much more potential snapping at their heels that it actually is even more exciting. So, you're always expecting to see Gerwin Price, Michael Smith, Johnny Clayton, the usual mob, Michael Van Gerwen, etc. But then suddenly a Luke Humphries comes along and smashes in 2 quite quick Euro tours, and you think, he's top 16 and he looks like top 8. So it's a soap opera of personalities and abilities. And the joy is you watch them, you recognise them, you identify with them, and you look forward to seeing their progress. So you become involved in the journey. It's half the secret.
All right, well, in the soap opera of darts that you've been involved in over the years, give me your top 5 moments. What are the 5 ones that stand out to you, whether it was games or people or just moments that have made it for you?
I think the best match I saw was Taylor and Barnveld in the World Championships, without a doubt. I think, although I felt sorry for Phil on that day because that was a stupid rule to leave the dart in from the first thrower. Gave it obviously advantage, didn't it? I mean, and it turned out that it cost Phil the world title, probably. But hey, Barney deserved he as they say, he potted enough balls to win the match. I think Phil Taylor's 9-darter at Blackpool was really special. That was absolutely fabulous. I think the emergence of Michael Van Gerwen has given me an awful lot of pleasure because I'm an anorak. And I obviously love the numbers and I love the spreadsheets. I'm still altering. I don't alter 128 players at every round anymore, but I sort of alter the top 16 by hand on every tournament.
You still do that every Monday with the rankings?
No, not every Monday. I do it live during the weekend. So this week, Europeans, I'm up there, mate. Friday afternoon, Friday night, bosh.
Pretty sure somebody will do that for you.
Yeah, I know, but it's not the same, It's not the same when you've got your wife shouting out, "You are a sad..." Because you've been in there for, when you've got 4 Pro Tours in a row or something like that. But the thing is, everything affects the game. Everything affects an individual. Suddenly someone goes, "I'm going to qualify for the World Championships here." That's massive, where people come from. You get in the World Championships and you can, say to yourself, "Well, I can make a life-changing amount of money." And I find that in business, I've always found that motivating. No matter what you've got, you want to win, don't you? And you want to, win at all price. Well, I'd like to stay within the rules, but it's not necessarily essential. But when I watch the darts, I get excited. And I'll pick on a few young players and I'll watch them because I don't know what they look like, but I analyse their data because that's the key. So you can see a star coming through that people don't know. And you look at their numbers against quality opposition. Mm-hmm. And these numbers don't lie. Now, they've got to stay on the right road. They've got to pay the price. They've got to sacrifice a little bit of their youth. But some of them, there's one in particular I'm watching a lot at the moment, Josh Rock.
Oh, now then, that's interesting.
Yeah. And he's hitting numbers. Even when he gets beat, he's hitting numbers that means he's not going to get beat very often.
He's right up your street as well, about 20 years old, works in a chicken factory,
I know.
Or did until he got a place on the tour.
Well, I'm glad of that because he missed a weekend in Germany a few weeks ago because he couldn't get off work, apparently, a few months ago. And I thought, negative, Josh, negative. Walk out, son. Stand your ground. Anyway, but he's doing really well. And I can tell you now, looking at it, he needs a couple of big results to get in the match play, but he's not that far away. At the moment, he's just qualifying for the World Grand Prix, and he's well into the World Championships.
You really do know those tables.
Oh, I know my numbers. And European-wise, he's a couple of grand safe on the European circuit, although he got beat in the first round last week. But he's capable, and he's beating quality players with high averages. So
he's an exciting talent.
I'm watching him. I watched him play a few of his matches. He doesn't even know me. He doesn't know.
Oh, he might have heard of you.
He would have heard of me, but he doesn't know. He doesn't know the scrutiny he's under. So I watched him in a couple of 5-all games, kick off with a 180. It's class. When you're under cosh, when you're young, when those ranking pound notes mean so much to you, you're really under it. If you can deliver under that type of cosh, you're going to be a decent player because you're going to get better. As long as he works hard enough, that kid will be he'll be top 8 player one day.
Are there any guys or girls who over the years you would have wanted to work with and perhaps couldn't for any reason, or ones that you thought were going to go on to greatness and never quite made it?
Yeah, loads. What, in darts?
Well, I mean, anywhere really, but I mean, if you've got any...
There's lots of people that you think... I had the best boxer in the world I've ever worked with. And you would never even have heard of his name, you know. His name was Juan Luis Lopez. Mexican fighter. 3 losses on his record. I didn't check his record properly. I put him in with one of my kids, Eamon Loughran, for the world welterweight title. I should have noticed his 3 losses. He was 14. I didn't look at the date. He knocked my kid out in the first round. And he would have been I think, well, to tell you how good he was, Oscar de la Hoya would not fight him. That's how good he was. But he had a little bit of a problem. He liked cannabis and surfing. And he was in one fight where he drew with Felix Trinidad, one of the great world champions. He could have won easy. He didn't throw a punch for 6 rounds. He wanted to see what the other kid had. Amazing fighter. And then got a draw, won the last 6 rounds. And I paid him in cash, which I should never have done. It was $100,000. And I thought it would inspire him, getting greedy. I never saw him again. He disappeared with $100,000, and the last I heard, he was a fat cruiserweight. He was a welterweight, 10 stone 7. He ended up as a fat cruiserweight, boxing for nothing. But he just took his marijuana and took his surfboard and lived the life. So there are always people in sport that let you down because, especially if you're like me, I'm very jealous of their ability. You know, and I see great players. I mean, I'm playing cricket at the moment for the Essex over 70s, and I'm half decent. But
absolute world beater according to your social media feed. Regular updates. I'm doing the tables every Monday morning, Barry. Your average is pretty good.
My average was 50 odd last year, and I'm doing all right. But I'm getting old. I'm getting creaky. But then I come across what I call a proper player, and you realise that golf is like phenomenal, you know. And I'm just in awe of people with ability. But as I say, because of physically I'm in reasonable shape. And mentally, I'm in top shape. As you get older, people that had much more ability than me 30 years ago don't look as sharp as they do now. So it's a much fairer fight for me.
When you're promoting a sport, everybody loves seeing, like we said with Phil Taylor, people want to see excellence. They want to see things they've never seen before. And that's why having somebody like a Phil Taylor is great for the game. Where do you stand on controversy? Because controversy can be good to sell a sport.
I love controversy. I mean, I don't like it to be nasty or not too nasty. Maybe a little bit nasty. I like it to be real. I don't like invented controversy. It's not staged. I mean, I think...
Well, there's a lot of that in the boxing, isn't there?
There's a huge amount. And, you know, it's like, after a while, when you've seen it 1,000 times, it's like, oh, go away, you know. Sling a chair at somebody else. Big girl's blouse, you know, what are you doing? But when it's really intense, that causes controversy just the same, you know? So there's the old phrase, there's no such thing as bad publicity. And that is true. I think, again, if you look at darts, we've just about got it right. I mean, controversy for us is Adrian Lewis and Gerwin Price having a word to each other at the end of a match, and Russ Bray jumping in the middle. Controversy. And that's harmless controversy, isn't it? It's handbags, which I think, but still enough to get people, oh, did you see that?
It was on Sky News.
Yeah. Well, you love it. But what you don't want is, you don't want Gerwin Price smacking a left hook on someone's face. That's controversy, but it's bad controversy. So it's within balance of what's going to give you enough media on it, and at the same time, is real. It needs to be real. I mean, WWE create controversy all the time, but everybody knows it's not real.
Yeah.
But it's still a good show, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's like going to the theatre, but
Of course, yeah, that's right.
different audience.
Yeah.
How do you think the game has changed in your time?
Well, the excellence, the standard of excellence is unbelievable. I mean, if you go back to Eric Bristow's days, winning the world title with averages of less than 90, you know.
Big wires, big chunky darts, though.
That's what they say. They say that, but do you know what? I can't compare myself. People were still shooting 10 under par with old clubs and old balls. They were just good golfers, you know. And maybe the courses were shorter, maybe the less bunkers, maybe they adjusted for the equipment. Similarly with the big old darts, they say, oh, big chunky darts and big things. Yeah, but there weren't very many events out there. They didn't get a chance to get good. Today, these kids today, you look at the schedule, you know, 30 Pro Tour events a year. I mean, if there was only 30 Pro Tour events a year, it's a season's work. But, you know, if you sling in 13 European tours and 8 majors, and then you're off with all these other smaller events, and it's darts today is like snooker was in the 80s. In the 80s, there was hundreds of pro-am competitions all the time. They hardly exist today. There was exhibitions for snooker players all the time. There's very few of them today. But darts, there's exhibitions all the time because it's so open and easy to organise, and they don't price themselves out too much.
Well, the standard is improving. The strength in depth's improving. We're getting people from all over the world playing.
More importantly is the perception of the game around the world has changed. That's the biggest change for darts in the last 20 years. People are now beginning, decision makers on broadcasters, decision makers on major companies looking at sponsorship, are are waking up to this sport delivers big numbers. It's good value for us. We want to be part of it. It's completely a meritocracy. It's diverse. It ticks every bloody box, whether you're an under-16 kid playing on the JDC tour, whether you're coming on to developmental tour. It has a structure based on golf, arguably, but it works. 800 people coming from around the world to Q School chasing 32 cards. It's brutal in its brutality.
With that, rising levels of professionalism, improved standard, improved exposure all around the world, sponsors, things like that, which in turn, you know, they want their guys to behave professionally. Are you worried that we might move away from the thing that first attracted you to it, relatability, characters, normal people, because they turn into robots?
I'm not worried about it because there is a good interaction between us and the darts players. There is conversations, there is education, but there's also one of the great things about darts, which you haven't mentioned. There's crooked games in most sports at some stage. We've never had anything in darts. Why? It's so easy. When you're that good, you can just miss. So why don't we get crooked games? The reason is because the darts players don't want to play in crooked games. They've got a basic working class attitude of what's right and wrong. And when it comes to looking at the sport, yes, they're getting better. Yes, they're getting better paid. But they still put something back. They still are available for interviews. There's none of this, you know, darling, not tonight, I want to be alone. Doesn't happen.
Speaking to the wrong players, Barry, I can name a couple.
No, but it's only because they don't like you, Dan. But, you know, but what I'm saying is that the game, I think darts players, more than any sportsman I've ever met, really appreciate what's been done for their game, what it's doing for their life. And for that reason, they give 100% all the time. They don't win all the time. They're available, they're accessible, and they're open to ideas. You know, I mean, I think I told you before, I remember years and years ago when the muffin man came up to me and said, I work in a bakery. Do you mind if I put a hat on and throw muffins to the crowd as I walk in? And I thought, get in there, boy. What sportsman has ever come up to me with an idea like that?
Eubank not keen on doing that?
I know, to an extent, but it was not the same, you know. This was a bloke that wasn't earning a fortune, that wasn't a superstar. And you get people, I mean, there's a kid on the snooker circuit called Peter Devlin. It's a rap singer. And he's quite good, you know. And I love all that. And I
Listen
think...
to him much?
Just, yeah, let's give it... Well, he was on some show the other day, but he's a personality. And the one criticism which I always get upset with, and I think he's wrong, is that there's no personalities in sport. Well, let me show you 128 darts players. Because every one of them's a personality.
Okay. Well... What's the ceiling for this? Where do we go from here? You're taking a step back.
No, but I'm taking a step back, only a little tiny step. I'm enjoying the journey. I mean, I'm going to get everyone else to do the work, but I'm going to enjoy. I think that I'm going to enjoy watching this acorn grow into a dirty great tree. Now, at the moment, it's more than a sapling. It's true. Prize money when I started was 500,000, just under. It's 15, 16 million now. I want to get it past 20 quickly because I think they deserve it. I heard someone said the other day, you're spoiling darts players. I thought, how can you spoil people with ability? That's ridiculous. So this is not yesterday. This is tomorrow. How big can it get? If we do this right, we can make this game bigger than golf.
Bigger than golf?
Yeah. Because it's accessible. Kids can play it. There's no barriers. All we need, when broadcasters analyse their figures and say, let me take, I don't know, Sky. Average golf tournament on Sky, average audience, 50,000, 60,000, maybe less. Average audience on darts, 200, 300. Biggest audience in golf, Ryder Cup. Biggest audience in darts, World Darts Championships, about the same size. So why don't we get the same money or more? Perception and competition. And the world we're in now is a world of competition for events that deliver numbers. Darts delivers numbers. Watch this space.
Well, look, you are going to be, as you say, still involved, a more withdrawn role. Sort of standing in the centre circle, pointing and shouting, yeah? Like the sort of veteran midfielder.
No, I'm sitting at the board meetings saying,
okay.
I'm the president and we own the company, and like any child, I want them to pass their exams, develop a career for themselves and blossom, because I will get the benefit of it.
Well, speaking of child, Eddie, obviously a massive part of Matchroom, your son. Am I right in thinking that one of your tests for Eddie was to get him in the boxing ring?
Yes. Well, he was a public school boy, and I had this chip on my shoulder for years about public school boys, people that spoke differently to me, or whose mum and dad drove up in a big car, etc., etc. And I wasn't very pleasant in those days. Of course, I'm a much nicer person now. But unfortunately, there was a stage when my son, big lump that he was I thought developing into one of those public schoolboy characters that I didn't like from my youth. And I wanted to find out what type of kid he was. So I thought the best way was to take him in the gym and have a proper fight with him and see what happens. He was only 16. I didn't think I was taking that much of a chance, although he was undefeated as a heavyweight just in the local gyms. But yeah, he dropped me twice in the second round, so that proved that he could look after himself. And I think I left the gym happier than he did. So it was a good test, and it just ticked another box. You shouldn't really worry about your children. I mean, obviously, you spoil your kids much more than you perhaps got spoiled, but that's a parent's duty to do. And you have to appreciate that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And when the DNA kicks in, generally, if you've done a decent job as a parent, you'll have a decent child in your honour.
So you feel that
he's a good operator.
Specifically darts is in as good a place as it ever could be.
I've always said that we're fortunate. We only promote sports that we're passionate about because we don't need the money, and I'm not going to waste my time having a boring night out. I don't know how many nights out I've got left in me, Dan. So I'm going to make sure that I only want to go to what I want to go to. And Eddie's the same. And when I decided it was probably time, I'm 74 in June, probably time to step slightly to one side. Eddie took over in my positions, other than he's not that keen on snooker. So he said, Dad, I think someone else would do a better job. I said, that's good. That's honest. He's on the board, but someone else would do a better job. And he's right, because you have to be passionate. But there was no way he was stepping away from the darts, because he loves the darts. He knows, he also recognises it's a great business for us as a family, but he goes to the darts, he enjoys the darts, and that's half the fun of being involved in ownership of something that you care about, rather than just use as a money-making vehicle. You know, we make money out of darts, but much more importantly is we've built darts. This is our back garden, and you know, and we're very happy to have everyone enjoy the grass.
I think plenty of time to enjoy it. Thank you very much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Dan. Thanks for the chat, mate.